Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so let's begin our program, Mindfulness in Buddhist Ways, with this study session. Now, in our last session, we learned about the first hindrance, which prevents our mindfulness, as sense desire. So today we will study this topic, ill will, as a hindrance to the mindfulness. So my friends, what is ill will? Ill will, in Buddhist language, it's vyapada, refers to a negative mental state characterized by anger toward others or situations. So as we know, will means something that when we keep in our heart, when we are going to achieve something, so we keep a strong determination, so I will achieve a particular thing. So that is the will. So when the will turn into a ill, which means here ill defines as the anger. So when we have anger with a will, so it is called ill will. Kind of a mental state which clouds our mindfulness. Kind of a mental state which prevents us from developing mindfulness. So it blocks our mindful attainments, and also it prevents and it clouds and it blocks our mental training. So when we are going to observe our mind, when we are going to meditate, so we can't do it correctly as long as our mind is possessed by ill will. So during some of our previous sessions, we studied about this ill will, and I hope you remember that there was a simile from the Buddha's teachings that ill will is like a bowl of water which is boiled and which is heated for a long time so that it smokes and also it ripples and it boils. When a person goes to look at their reflection through the water, they won't see that because that water is rippling and it's bubbling and it's heated. Buddha say when a mind is possessed by ill will, we have the same feeling, we have the same mental reaction. So when we are going to meditate, when we are going to read a book, and or maybe when we are going to think about something, or when we are going to do our work, so we can't correctly do that as long as we have ill will. So ill will is originate from anger. This originate from the deep-rooted defilement, anger. It is called dosa in Buddhist language, one of a root cause for the suffering. Now, in some of the teachings, Buddha teach anger as a fire which burns us. So, ill will is a kind of a mental state which starts from anger. So it manifests in from the anger into a different mental states. So when it comes to ill will, it's the strong will which is kept with ill to achieve something, mostly like a kind of a revenge. When we during our last session, so we learned that sensual desire is the chasing after sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And that also plays a major role in preventing our mindful training. So when we don't get our desired happiness through this object of the senses, we become repelled with that. So we get a kind of resistance to that experience. And that is also the ill will. So we name that as ill will. You know, while Buddha teach about our mind, about our life, and even about our mental states, so he teach in different ways. He used different definitions to teach us. So we will explore about this furthermore. Ill will can manifest as wanting to get rid of something or someone, whether through anger, resentment, or avoidance. We can still deal with a difficult situation or a person by not having ill will, but applying different strategies such as having a proper discussion uh, or with a calmer approach without anger or resistance, because anger always blinds, which prevents mindfulness and clarity. It can blind us because when our mind is possessed with anger, with ill will, or any other manifestations of the angry root, can blind our mind. So we can't see or figure out clearly our mind or things we speak or things we do. When anger develops into higher stages, it becomes much powerful, creating ill will within us. In that moment, we want to get rid of our sensory experience. We become so much stressed by seeing something, hearing something, smelling something, or tasting or touching. So if our mind does not reach to directly to the breathing, if our mind is not still or peaceful, we might have this nature of resistance, this ill will. When it comes to the anger, if we let the anger unabandoned, could lead to a greater harm because it can gradually increase its power. Just as let's say if we are creating a beautiful flower bed, so if there are any weed plants among these beautiful flowers, if we don't recognize that, if we don't put our attention to it, if we let it uprooted, I mean the weed, so it can invade the entire flower bed and gradually neutralize and prevent from growing the beautiful growth of the beautiful flowers, flower plants. So one need to recognize and uproot those weed plants. Why? If we don't recognize, if we don't put our attention to it, so it can grow and it can even invade all the other flowers and stop the growth. So after some time, we won't see the beautiful flowers, but all we see is the weed plants. Now the Buddha said, The same way, when there arise anger, it arises from very subtle stage, but gradually it can increase. It can increase up to ill will because it can gradually increase its power. So we need to abandon that. Now, among the Buddhist teachings, so I found among some of the commentaries that it has a very beautiful explanation about the anger and how it increase. The very mild kind anger that arises, burn the heart, and then subsides. There are moments that we might experience anger, but it's not very powerful. It arises and burns the heart. We feel some burning feeling inside, and then it naturally subsides. And the kind that arise more strongly, because of which one grimaces, which means it can change their mood. When it arises inside, it can run all over our body, and our mood can also change. Here it says one grimaces. An ugly grimaces means an ugly twisted expression on a person's face, typically expressing disgust and pain. You know, sometimes people clench their fist out of anger, sometimes they grind their teeth. So it is a kind of a result from this angry thought, angry root. And a still stronger kind that one moves one's jaws, deciding to speak harshly. And it's still a stronger kind because of which one actually speaks harshly. So then one start to engage in quarrels or maybe with arguments by having some preceded by like followed by the anger. So one speaks harshly and is still stronger kind. It can develop furthermore because of which one looks around for a rod or for a weapon. Now, entire mind, entire words and actions are occupied by the anger. So one reach for a weapon or for a rod, and a still stronger kind reaches for a rod or for a weapon. So one grabs and take a weapon to harm a person because of anger. And the still stronger kind because of which one grabs hold a rod and pursues someone to harm them. So it is also a grown level of anger. And a still stronger kind because of which one gives someone one or two blows. So they will engage with a fight because of followed by the anger. And a still stronger kind because of which one kills a relative or a family member. So this way, the ill will starting from anger can cause so much harm for ourselves or and for others. And the still stronger kind because of which one later feels regret about the act and takes one's own life. So it's said that in this commentary that the anger can cause such a harm, even to feel disgusted about one's own life out of regret. But it started from very subtle level, but it is inside this ignorant mind. So it's a one way of our mental reaction. So we need to understand this as a defilement. When anger arises, we need to cut off it's from the root. So that's why we have these meditation and mindful practices. Now we can see clearly how much that this anger could prevent our mindfulness and block that mindfulness. As we can see clearly, anger is not under our control. So this is a place that we can easily see that this anger is not under our self-control. It is under the control of conditions. As we learned with sense desire, the anger, ill will also have a conditions. underlying within us and causing us uh, to give rise to the ill will. So it does a greater harm by being hidden from us. So it is under the control of conditions. Just as a seed sprout from the earth and grow up until a giant tree, anger grows without stopping. So in a sutta, Buddha say, in a teaching, he say, monks, I do not see even one other thing on account of which an arisen ill will arises, and arisen ill will increases and expands so much as the mark of the repulsive. So when we interact with the world through our senses, we interact with sights, we see sound, we hear sound, or smell, taste, touch. Among them, there are some marks and features which can bring us anger, which can bring us ill will, which can trigger us. From our side, in our mind, we have constant ignorant thinking, the thinking which infected by not understanding the reality of the life. So that's what brings us these angry thoughts. So now the Buddha say, I do not see one other thing on account of which unarisen ill will arises. And already arisen ill will increases all the more and expands so much as the mark of the repulsive, catching the marks of the repulsive. Here, the mark of the repulsive should be explained furthermore because there are some words that we can find among the Buddha's language that we don't have direct translation in English. So it's very difficult to give it a correct and also a direct uh, definition, like a direct term in English. So this said mark of the repulsive, but when it comes to that mark, um, we can see when we see a certain sight which brings anger, it is a mark of repulsiveness, which means among the sights, say if someone is looking at us angrily, could be a mark of repulsion for us. Let's say someone is looked at us angrily. So we usually we catch those marks from that sight. It's something which keeps happening within us. Even we don't like it, it enters us as a sign, as a mark. So those appearances among the sights that we see can enter us as a mark of repulsiveness. So it is kind of a disgusting sight that we interact with. So that enters through our senses, not only from the sight, but also from the sound. Let's say we are in a discussion, we might find some words irritate us. So those words could be a mark of repulsion. Say when we are talking with someone, there might be some way like a rhythm or a pattern that person speaks to us, or maybe some specific words in his discussion could brings us irritation, brings us a sadness, or maybe brings us anger. So though that is also a mark of the repulsiveness. We become repelled from that side. But this mind has a habit of catching all these marks, whether it is harmful or not, it enters to the mind. When we desire a tasty food, but if we don't get that desired enjoyment from that food, we catch that mark of repulsion and we start to give it a careless attention. That is what happens from our side, from our mind. we don't have a fresh or like clear or mindful attention. We usually have ongoing careless attention because of the ignorance. So it connects with the features that we catch from our sights, sound, smell, taste, touch. When these two things adds together, Buddha say, as a result, it gives rise to the ill will. And there is no self involved in this process. It can happen without our attention, without our mindfulness, without our uh, observance. It can play behind us. This is why we need to develop mindfulness. But this is a habitual process of our mind. It keeps catching these marks through the sensory experience, and it connects with the careless attention. Thus, it brings us ill will. We want to get rid of that. We keep a will. Oh, why I have this? When I will escape from this? Why I have to see this? Why I have to listen to this sound? Why I have to taste this? So it is kind of a resistance that we create in us as a result of constant connection with the mark of the repulsiveness and with the careless attention. So those are the conditions which create mental state of ill will. Later on, cloud the mind, prevent the mindfulness. In that moment when we are going to meditate, meditation will not get success because our mind is addicted to this pattern of ill will. And in a worst case, we put our self-view into that mental state, which cause even more troubles because we don't see that it as a conditioned activity, but mostly we try to see it as a self, and that can cause much more growth to this mental state. So there is no self involved in this process. Now the sutta say, for one who attends carelessly or irrationally to the mark of the repulsive, unarisen ill will arises, and arisen ill will increases and expands. It can increase all the more. If we keep looking at that irritable, like repulsive mark, if we keep looking at that specific object of like a specific site, we can experience that our anger, our ill will is increasing little by little, gradually it is increasing. Say if someone is criticizing you, offending you, so you hear that sound, and we usually recognize it as repulsive when we give careless attention to that sound, so it can increase our ill will. So as for the taste, as for the smell, so as for the touch. So there can be some touch. Let's say for an example, if somebody's hit us or maybe bump into us, we can easily like get anger, ill will. There is no self involved in arising ill will. When there are conditions and causes, ill will arises, and once arisen increases. If we ever had our authority over ill will to say, may this ill will be thus, not be thus, we won't let it increase. If we had authority, because we know that it is burning us, it is brings us to so much pain, and it's cloud our mindfulness. We don't see our emotions, our thoughts, and how they function in a time that we are occupied with ill will. We can't command the mind in any way. Ill will stays with us until we start to spread loving kindness. So the loving kindness is the antidote for eradication of ill will. When we start to see the world with affection, with love, with kindness, with compassion, it can uh, change the perspective. It can change this mental process. Later will brings us so much peace in our mind. And loving kindness brings more capacity and more space in us. So, but usually this happens, this ill will arise. It doesn't need um, special like mental effort. It can naturally arise. It is such a vast and such an instant thing. Like usually we only experience ill will, we don't see its conditions. We see that accumulation of the ill will is so powerful. So maybe we will get some mindfulness right after we spoken, right after we done is a specific thing. So later we think about that. Oh, in that moment I got anger. But the reason is why it is such a powerful mental illness, mental defilement. If we unconsciously provide these causes and conditions, ill will persist and increase. But if we are able to stop providing the causes and conditions, anger will stop. So for this, my friends, I think you have seen like, the puppet. So usually people connect the puppets like um, arms and hands and head and even with the face. Puppets are like connected with the strings. So the puppeteer, like the people who control this puppet, use their hand gestures to move this puppet. So this puppet will move as long as it is connected with the strings. So if somebody were to break the strings, the puppet will not move. So it is also with the conditioned nature of the life. As long as there are conditions, we will have the result. As long as a man is moving his own arms, the puppet's movements will also happen. So say big why? Because the puppet is connected with the strings. So the same way, as long as we have uh, attention, careless attention to the marks of the repulsiveness of the objects, we see as a result, like a movement of a puppet, we see this ill will is arising in us. Even we don't like it, even the people around us don't like it. It keeps persisting continuously, keep working again and again. We see the ill will is growing again and again. It is because there was direct connection with the causes and conditions. Now, ill will, conditioned by mark of repulsiveness, to careless attention. It is in Buddhist language, Patiga Nimitta and Ayoniso Manasikara. When you listen to these teachings, my friends, try to see your life through this teaching and try to understand how this work in your life, because this teaching is all about our own life. If we can recognize these teachings through us, we can easily start to meditate much more easier, so we can neutralize the defilements in our mind. So try to apply them into your life and with your past experiences. So it will help you to independently keep following this practice. So the result is ill will. Because I do not see even one other thing on account of which unarisen ill will does not arise, and arisen ill will is abandoned so much as the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attains carefully to the liberation of the mind of loving kindness, unarisen ill will does not arise, and arisen ill will is abandoned. When you change your careless attention to careful attention, which means if you have mindfulness, and when you see the objects with compassionately, with loving kindfully, with loving kindful mind, that ill will, the manifestation of the ill will terminate and it will stop there. And even if you spend more time with recognizing and perceiving everything with love, your ill will abandon. To remove ill will, one need to attend carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, which means one need to liberate their mind, single out, separate their mind to loving kindness. They get just the loving kindness to the mind, to the heart. They liberate their mind from anger, from ill will, from resistance into loving kindness. You practice loving kindness and you give it a careful attention, which means you recognize the people, the things which with much affection, which much compassion, which much love. So you start to meditate on loving kindness. So it can prevent ill will. It can stop the resistance. It can stop the anger. And a reason ill will does not arise, and a reason ill will is abandoned. It can completely abandon your ill will if you meditate on loving kindness. If you put careless attention to the loving kindness. If we spend the entire day developing loving kindness towards all living beings, we reduce the tendency for anger to arise in us. In doing so, we begin to see everything, whether people or situations, with affection rather than resistance. Because you identify, because you perceived everything that you interact with love, with compassion, you will prevent the tendency to develop the anger because you don't mostly go into the features of repulsiveness. If a person looking at you angrily or if a person is insulting you, you don't see that person or maybe their expressions with a disgustion, with a disgusting mind or with a repulsive mind. You mostly see as a person, may that person be free from suffering. May he not fall into suffering. May he free from danger. So that is a kind of a strategy the Buddha say. If you practice loving kindness to the entire world, you will never resist from any experience. This is amazing. Like that's why Buddha said those who are practicing loving kindness sleeps well, wakes well, they never see nightmares, their complexion gets so brightened because they cut off the resistance in their life. Attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. That's the antidote to catching these marks, repulsive marks from the objects. Yeah, there is a short story, simple story from the Buddhist text I would like to share with you. So this happened like this. On one occasion, the wife of a certain Brahmin of the Bharadwaja clan, that was their clan, a Brahmin lady named Dhananjani, this woman's name is Dhananjani, had full confidence in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Once, while the Brahmin lady was bringing the Brahmin his meal, she stumbled. she just stumbled while she was bringing that Brahmin's food plate. Whereupon she uttered 3 times this inspired utterance: Homage to Blessed One, Arahant, perfectly enlightened one. So she said it for 3 times because she was going to fall away. So she remembered about the Buddha. So it's something that she practiced. So in a kind of a danger, usually people say this homage. They salute to the Buddha like this way. Now that Brahmin husband was not like the Buddha. He doesn't follow the Buddha. So when this was said, the Brahmin of the Bharadwaja clan said to her, "For the slightest thing, this wretched woman spouts out praise of that shoveling ascetic. Now, wretched woman, I am going to refute the doctrine of that teachers of yours." So he heard that sound while she was uttering salutation to the Buddha. And this person gave careless attention to that sound. He recognized that sound as a mark of repulsiveness. So in his side, he has this careless attention always. So he got ill will. He blamed and said, "This I will go to your teacher and I will argue with him and I'll turn your teacher's teaching away." So then she said, "I do not see anyone, husband, Brahmin, in this world with its deities, Mara, Brahman, in this generation with its ascetics and Brahmins, who could refute the doctrine of the Blessed One. But go, Brahmin, when you have gone, you will understand that for yourself." Then the Brahmin of the Bharadwaja clan, this Brahmin gets so furious and displeased, and he got more anger while she was praising the Buddha. He was keep perceiving this sound as a repulsive, and then he was applying his constant attention to this, careless attention to this, and then he approached the Buddha. When he was traveling to the monastery, he was full of ill will because he was grown so much. Brahmin asked this from the Buddha to start an argument. He thought, asking this way, Buddha will not give a correct answer, so I will start to argue with him. So, kind of a funny question. Like he asked, having slain what does one sleep soundly? Having slain what does one not sorrow? What is the one thing, O Gautama, whose killing you approve? He asked, what you need to kill, what you need to slay to have a good sleep, what you need to slay to not to sorrow, not to feel any sadness in you. What is the just a one thing? Can you tell just a one thing? After killing, you approve that killing. What is that? Now, in that moment, he was full of anger, full of ill will. He wanted to revenge. Now he's having that play of the conditions. Secretly in him, there is underlying conditions, careless attention, connected with the catching the mark of repulsiveness. And then he was filled with ill will. Now the Buddha gave the direct answer to him. Having slain anger, you kill anger. One sleeps soundly, you will sleep so peacefully. Kill anger. One does not sorrow. The killing of anger, Brahmin with its poisoned root, honey tip. This is the killing the noble ones praise. For having slain that, one does not sorrow. You will never suffer if you kill, not the person caused you to have anger, but the anger itself. If you kill the anger itself, you will never sorrow. This is a very beautiful simile. Buddha say it's anger is like a poisoned root, honey tip. Poison root, if it is a tree, it is the deep-rooted anger. So every resistance in our life is start from this root of anger. We have that in bottom of our mind. Honey tip is the revenge. If the anger is a well-grown tree, its root is the poison of anger, while the tip, such as leaves, fruits, and the fruits and the leaves and the flowers, are the different ways of revenge. There are so many ways that people choose to do some reaction if somebody did some bad thing to them. But anyone uproot this big tree, they will sleep at ease. That's quite very fascinating thing. Like after uprooting that entire big tree, one sleeps at ease. The killing of anger, O Brahmin, with this poison root and honey tip, this is the killing that the noble ones, enlightened ones, Buddhas, praise, kill that anger. For having slain that, one does not sorrow. So they will have so much peaceful mind if they uproot the anger. So we learned to how to uproot the anger. We need loving kindness. We need to see the world and everyone, everything around us with the intention of love and kindness. And we keep applying our careful attention, our mindfulness to that. If we develop that two conditions, we can have a mind with possessed with only with love. Not only it will increase, but also it will brings us so much clarity, precision, and so much love to ourselves and to the world. So in that moment, Buddha delivered this beautiful talk. In that moment, he was occupied with anger. Maybe he had an idea of self. This is me. This anger is mine. This anger is myself. I can control this mind. I can control this anger. He wanted to. He make a decision to refute the Buddha's teachings, to engage with a quarrel with the Buddha. But even that he identified himself with as a self to that mental state of ill will, when the Buddha gave the correct, careful attention, when the Buddha gave careful attention to this man, this Brahmin, his manifestation of anger was stopped. He got different, like the mind was changed. When this was said, the Brahmin said to the Buddha, "Magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent Master Gautama." Though he had anger, he couldn't rely on that mental state. His conditions for the anger was changed. When the Buddha gave the teaching, his careless attention was changed into the careful attention to the yoniso manasikara. So he said the Dhamma has been made clear in many ways by Master Gautama. So he explained his joy and his happiness to the Buddha. You helped me. You removed my darkness. You changed my angry mind. It was like a person who is holding a light for me. I go for refuge, so he said. So he also asked for his from him about monk life. I want to enter to the ordination, and then he became a ordained monk. And after a few days, he received high ordination and he became enlightened. He completely uprooted that anger. So, but he previously had a wrong intention, like to refute the teaching, but he changed. So, why? Because we are conditioned. So, that is something very important to understand. We can change our mind. We can change our mind into a higher level. We can train our mind. We can develop our mindfulness. So, my friends, thank you so much for listening to the teaching. Hope this will help you in your mindfulness training. Thank you. Namo Buddhaya, friends.